There we go. And I'll just do this too. I put on the transcripts as well.
Great.
Okay, everyone. So welcome to Apprenticeship Questions and Answers.
So we acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas and the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples.
So my name is Matt Bradley. I'm the coordinator for the OYAP program. With me tonight is Shannon McLeod. We also have a team member that is not able to make it here. It's their mother's birthday. So that's Rosemary Spada. We're all we try and make ourselves available to you. If you have questions outside of this session, please feel free to reach out and we'll show you how to do that later on.
So for the Zoom rules, I'm sure you're all very familiar by now, but we're just going to ask that you keep yourself muted. If you'd like to ask a question, please go ahead and type it in the chat as soon as it comes to you. Tonight is all about questions and answers. So we're going to take questions as they come. And if you'd like, you could also raise your hand and we'll call upon you to unmute if you'd like to ask your question out loud.
Awesome. So we're here to talk about apprenticeship, and hopefully you have a student that's either in OYAP or thinking about joining OYAP and you want to find out all the information you can. This is what we're here to do. Shannon and I were sort of thinking about this from two different approaches. I mean, you probably came here hopefully with some questions. And obviously we're going to make sure that everybody leaves with their questions answered. I also thought that you might benefit from just like an overview of apprenticeship that your students have definitely heard, but it may be helpful for you to hear as well. I don't know, I guess maybe, do we want to see if there's a show of hands for that, if you want to hear about a little presentation?
Oh, we should have created a poll for that beforehand, but we didn't. Yeah, let us know if you'd like a brief little overview. Oh, there's a thumbs up. Thanks, Tara.
Well,
we'll take that as a yes. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
There you
go. So apprenticeship is a post-secondary education pathway that leads to amazing careers. And most of them are in what normally are considered skilled trades. And they have like significantly no debt, which is a really important difference between the other post-secondary pathways. Other key features is that unlike university and college, the apprenticeship pathway has a 1-to-1 student-teacher ratio for 80% of the training. And then, a higher ratio for 20% of it. And we can get into some of the details. It takes 3 to 5 years to complete. And, because apprenticeship is predicated or like you're required to be employed in that skilled trade to complete an apprenticeship, you're earning the whole time while you're learning.
So there are some really key components to apprenticeship. So the first requirement is that you must be employed. In order to become a registered apprentice, you actually have to be employed and working in your trade. And then once you're with that employer, you need to request what's called a registered training agreement. That is a document that is signed by the apprentice and their parent or guardian if they're under 18, and then their sponsor, which is the term used for the employer. And this document tells the ministry that this person is actually working as an apprentice, and it allows them to accumulate hours on the job and also be invited to levels of training. So in an apprenticeship, you do about 90% of your learning on the job, And then you get invited to do some training. They could be in blocks. They could be like day release. There's different structures for it, but typically it's like a 2-month block of learning, however that's spread out. And you will get invited by the ministry to those training blocks if you have a training agreement. One key thing is that if you ever change employers, you need to make sure that you get a new training agreement. Otherwise, the ministry doesn't really know where you're at.
Okay, so this is there's a lot of really important information on this. You know, you can see this. There's a link for this on our website, Shannon, is there? Or
Yeah, I think there is.
But some important features, like, you know, Shannon and I both have gone to, like, you know, college and university in addition to sort of being apprenticeship advocates. So we're not in any way saying that university is bad or college is bad, but we're seeing increasingly that university does not lead to the sort of like careers that it may have when, you know, you were looking at post-secondary pathways for yourselves. So $37,000, that might seem like a, you know, a lot of money to be in the hole after a university degree, but it can represent an excellent investment if it leads to a career that requires that education. What we're seeing now, though, is that there's less careers that are really recognizing a BA in English or a BA in philosophy, like I have, as something that is desirable and required for their employment in the companies. So we're hoping, you know, through the messaging that we put out, that students in the TDSB are, you know, looking at all the pathways equally, and there's value to every pathway. We have to fight really hard so apprenticeship is on the same at the same table as the college and university pathways. So a lot of this stuff we're going to cover, but, you know, the starting salary is really exciting for students. The amount of debt is really exciting for students. You know, and I think the student to teacher ratio is really important as well. But you know, we're not trying to dissuade anyone from doing anything that they want. We're just trying to make sure that everybody has all the information that they need to make the right decision. Oh, here's a good question. What grade can you start? So apprenticeship, the apprenticeship can start as early as grade 10, technically now, in when you're 14 years old. But it's most typically started in high school in grade 11 and 12.
Did you say 14 or 15?
Sorry, it's 15 with 14 credits. That's what I meant to say if I did not say that.
Okay, so apprenticeship is obviously all about the skilled trades, and Matt's yelling at his kids right now, so we'll just give him a second because he's going to advance the slide for us. Okay, Matt, can you thanks. So in the skilled trades, there's a huge opportunity right now because it's estimated that we're looking for a shortage of over 500,000 skilled workers by 2030, which is insane. It's because, you know, for the last 20 years or so, we've all been going to university and college, and there hasn't been a lot of people going into the skilled trades, unfortunately. And the average journey person right now is 55 years old. So they're all nearing retirement, and there haven't been people to come in and fill their boots. So now there's this huge gap. So that means there's an amazing opportunity for students coming out of high school right now to just step into a really great career.
Okay, and the great thing about apprenticeship is that there's 144 different trades that you can pursue through the apprenticeship pathway. And they're broken down, as you can see here, between 4 sectors. Motive power, that's things like automotive service technician, truck and coach technician, service technician or service, which has the greatest variety of trades within it. So you can see things like baker, cook, hairstylist, information technology, hardware technician, pool and hot tub spa service technician, arborist, wooden boat rebuilder. There's all sorts of like really interesting trades that you may not be aware of in all of them, but particularly in the service sector. Construction sector is the sort of one that most people associate with apprenticeship, where you have things like plumber, roofer, drywall, electrician, carpenter, things like that. And then industrial, actually, we've covered up some of the occupations. There's so many of them, has the most occupations, featuring things like, industrial electrician, welder, pattern maker, blacksmith, cabinet maker, lots of interesting trades. So these are all occupations that you can pursue through the amazing apprenticeship pathway. And so what's really important is that you don't have, like, if you wanted to be, say, any of these things here, like, let's just say a cook, there is a college program with the exact name of this trade. And you could, in theory, pay Humber College or George Brown College thousands and thousands of dollars to pursue this at college. But because it's also apprenticeable, you can pursue it in the apprenticeship pathway, which is has no burden to entry. There's no tuition, major tuition where you pay and then you learn. So it's a phenomenal way to pursue any of these occupations. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a couple questions here.
Yeah. So Shannon. The first one is, what is a 1-to-1 teacher ratio?
Okay, so that is where, like, it's a great question, and it seems like unfathomable, but it's where there's one teacher and one student. So it's like a student to teacher ratio of 1-to-1, where normally, like in a TDSB school, you see probably, on average, it might be like 25-to-1. Or in university, if we go back a couple slides, you can see that the average faculty to student ratio is 85-to-1. So, I mean, and this represents the fact that you're working with a journey person, which is like the mentor, and the journey person is the mentor, and as the apprentice, you're the mentee. Okay, Shannon, is it any time in grade 10 or second semester?
It could be first semester or second semester. You can choose.
But in grade 10, you have to be 15. So for most people, that's going to be second semester, I think.
Good point. And we didn't mention this, I don't think yet, but if you want to be on a construction site, you need to be 16.
Yeah. Okay.
Next question. Can a student start in one trade and change after with the ministry? For instance, carpentry to cabinet making or furniture making?
Yeah, absolutely. That's no problem at all. You can, and there's lots of people who hold multiple designations and they've completed multiple apprenticeships. However, for changing from one trade to another, even if they're as related as carpentry and cabinet making, you don't get credit for the time you spent as a carpenter towards your cabinet making apprenticeship.
Good point.
Okay, Shannon, do co-op hours count towards the apprenticeship requirements?
They do, actually. When you do co-op in the TDSB in an OYAP or an apprenticeable trade, what we do is we send out a letter to the students that has a record of the hours that they've worked, and they can then submit those to the ministry and count those towards their apprenticeship hours. Students that are in Accelerated OYAP, though, which is one of our programs we'll talk about probably in a bit, those students actually have to have registered training agreements, so their hours are already being recorded.
Okay, so there's a lot of great questions here. I'm going to power through a little bit more of the deck just to give you some overall information, and then we'll jump in and everyone will get their questions answered. Okay.
So why are the skilled trades so great? Because being skilled is cool. We're finally cool, Matt. Working in the skilled trades is a really, really important and essential part of our society. Like, we need people to keep the lights on, keep our water running, fix our vehicles. Like, it really is essential, and means that there will always be work. You're always going to be in demand. And right now, the demand is incredible, like we've talked about before, because of the mass retirements. There's a big gap and lots of work out there. There's the opportunity to be your own boss and have your own business, which is really powerful. For anyone who's on their own business, it's really great. Like, it's a lot of work, but it's also really fantastic to be in charge of your life and decide who you're surrounding yourself with, like who are you going to hire and work with every day, what jobs are you going to take, which jobs are you not going to take, how much vacation, what are you going to charge. So it's really nice to have that much control over your life. And there have been studies done that have shown that people working in the skilled trades are actually happier than most other workers in Canada. There's a big report that was put out by Job Talks. If you want to look into it, it's really interesting. And then the pay is really good, and probably going to get even better in the next few years, where there's a big supply and demand issue. And then there's a possibility of pension, which is becoming more and more rare, and benefits.
Okay, so the traditional pathway for apprentices is it starts with getting a job. So, you know, in OYAP, we have sort of an exemption to the apprenticeship system that allows our students to do an unpaid cooperative education experience in place of the job. But if, you know, a parent or guardian, you know, were so inspired by this presentation that you wanted to start your apprenticeship, it begins when you get employment as an apprentice. Now, that sounds hard, and it is really hard. And this is the real value that OYAP presents, or like the OYAP is valuable to students because it gives them the skills and experience that employers require in order for them to get onto this pathway, to get that first and most important job. But once you're on the job, it basically goes between periods of being employed to doing, in this model, this is a block release model where the student would go to do training at a college or union training center for 8 weeks at a time. And then after that finishes, they would go back on the job. There's lots of awesome incentives in this in-school training. After OYAP, they would collect employment insurance. They would, you know, even though there is a small tuition for this, it's like about $600 for the 8 weeks. The Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development is kicking in around $3,500 or $4,000 for the training. Plus, in Red Seal trades, if you're successful and you're a man, you get $1,000, and if you're a woman, you get $3,000. So these are really important incentives along the way to keep you employed the whole time. Okay. So, and then there's an exam for you to write at the end of the whole process here. And then when you finish all of the requirements for your trade, you get a certificate of qualification and you become a journey person in that trade. This is what it looks like. And this one has a red seal, which means that John Q. Public here can go to any province or territory in Canada and work without seeking any type of recognition in that territory to work as an electrician in the construction and maintenance sector or industry job. And this is how you do it in the TDSB. We can start you right now. You know, typically it happens in grade 11 and 12, but sometimes just recently became possible to do it in grade 10. So yeah, Shannon, you want to take this?
Yeah, so any student can start an apprenticeship in high school, and they can start as soon as they're 15 years old, and they have 14 credits. And like I said before, if you want to be on a construction site, you need to be 16 years old. We can even take grads in our program as long as they are under 21 years old. And we can take adult students as long as they do not have an OSSD. So you can be over 21 if you don't have an Ontario Secondary School diploma, you can actually come back and do this program.
Okay, so Specialized OYAP is an amazing program. It's offered at Central Tech and Danforth Tech is opening one or reopening one, and where you get a concentrated intervention of technological education and cooperative education, which is incredibly powerful for when you enter the workforce or you enter your co-op placement, having those technical skills is really, really important to the employer. I'm going to go into speed mode here, Shannon, because we got a lot of questions, and I just want to keep this very brief. Okay, so Specialized Trades Exploration Program. This is one of the most proud thing that we have in the TDSB. We're unique in the province to offer these programs. This is where the students do a semester in a high-rise construction site, getting a variety of trade experiences in one short semester. So this is a unique, only TDSB has this, and it offers students the unique opportunity to get like a breadth experience actually on the work site. So it gives them a really informed way of deciding what trade they want to pursue in the future. Step to Transportation is a similar situation, but it's in the TTC where you get to explore instead of on a high-rise construction site, you're in a TTC shop working on the equipment that they have there. And it's like truck and coach, auto service, auto painting, auto body, lots of different trades within the transportation sort of sector that can be sampled in these programs. The PACE program is a pre-apprenticeship cooperative education program where you work in one particular trade with a TDSB tradesperson and going and fixing, repairing, and building the TDSB, repairing the TDSB schools that are already in existence. I'm going to skip this one over. So Accelerated OYAP, a lot of you sounds like have students in the Accelerated OYAP program. This is a semester 2 only program where you do it in your final year of your OSSD. And you can do it as a graduate. If you've already graduated, you can come back until you're 21. But just like all the other programs, Accelerated OYAP is a school to work program. The intention is that we're going to be transitioning you from this into a paid apprenticeship upon graduation. So here they get the job experience and the in-school part in one very short semester, and it's accelerated, it's intense, it has a high level of demands upon the students. So it does require some life changes in some situations, but it is an amazing program. It's offered in a whole variety of different trades. And, I could talk for hours about each individual trade, but I'm just going to go spend a minute on each slide. Automotive service technician, baker, brick and stonemason, all super in-demand trades. Child development practitioner. This is the apprenticeship pathway towards becoming an early childhood educator. Child and youth worker, similar college pathway to become a child and youth worker. You can apprentice in it. Cook, similarly, there's a college pathway to this, but you can apprentice in it. Construction craft worker. This is a partnership that we have with Ontario's largest construction union, LIUNA 183, where you enter as a construction laborer, but have the option to move into tile, brick, heavy equipment, cement finishing. There's a ton of different trades represented by that union, and this is the entryway into that. Electrician, our most popular trade by number of applications. Hopefully everybody knows what that is. Floor covering installer. This is like an interior finishing trade where there's lots of great opportunities, and it says training center, but what it should say is local 27. It's a unionized situation, so it's all industrial, commercial, and institutional flooring that's being done here. It's not doing hardwood in your upstairs closet. General carpenter. This is offered at the local 27 Carpenters Union, as well as this year we added a cohort in George Brown College. Hairstyling is at Studio 500. This is what in a TDSB school, we have our very own training delivery agent in hairstyling. Interior finishing drywall. This is at the training center in Woodbridge. This is a union program. A lot of the unions, not all of them, a lot of the unions have paid cooperative education placements. Plumbing is a program, hopefully you all know what plumber is, and that's at Humber College and George Brown. Air conditioning mechanic. This is the air conditioning side of the HVAC trade. So you've all probably heard HVAC. This is the AC part of that. And typically, an air conditioning system mechanic would also have his gas license or her gas license by the time they're working in the field. But this is the commercial certification. So it's the sort of highest level of certification in that field. And then tile setter, the actual trade name for this one is Toronto Tile Marble Setter. And this is with this is actually with the TTMC or the Toronto,
yes.
yeah, Toronto Tile and Marble Trade School is where this is actually located. And then truck and coach technician at Centennial College. And then we have two new ones next year, auto body collision damage repair and heavy duty equipment technician.
Okay, I think we should take some questions now.
Okay, let's go back up here.
Okay, so is there a required number of hours before doing your level 1 for plumbing?
Okay, so that's a great question. If you're not in the accelerated OYAP program and you're doing you're a regular apprentice, the typical wait time, before COVID would be about a year, where you would accumulate whatever, I think it's like around, would it be about 1,500 hours would be represent about a year of working in the skilled trades. But it's not exact. And essentially the way it works is once you've got a registered training agreement and you've been in it for sort of like 8 to 10 months, you might actually start getting invitations to train at that time. It could take, and we've seen that it's taking longer for especially first-term apprentices to be invited to school because COVID it canceled a lot of training. And then when it did resume, it was like half size classes. Now it's back to full size classes, but there's still a little bit of a backlog where level 1s are waiting longer than they typically have in the past. Okay, where are we here? Shannon, is apprenticeship during the day? Does it still allow for completion of your high school diploma?
So if you're doing OYAP in high school, then yes, your apprenticeship is during the day. It's close to normal school hours. And it definitely allows for completion of your high school diploma because you're earning credits. Usually, well, it depends, but sometimes people do a 2-credit co-op. So you get two credits, you're doing like a half-day co-op, or a full-day co-op where you're getting 4 credits for that semester. And then in the case of accelerated, there's actually the opportunity to get dual credits. So you could earn up to 6 credits in one semester. Okay, next question, Matt. My daughter is in grade 12 going into hairstyling. Will the apprenticeship be just this semester or will it continue after she graduates? Is there a cost associated if it continues after graduating?
Okay, great question. So I've taken us back to this slide here. So this is what you're getting in the level in the accelerated program for hairstyling. So I'm hoping that's what you're talking about in hairstyling in the accelerated program. Doesn't say that explicitly, but
oh, that's true.
But so if she is in this accelerated program, then she will be getting her level 1 in this semester. And then hairstyling has only 2 levels. So what happens is that after a time, the school will invite you, or you'll get invited to train your level 2, and the cost is incredibly low. It's like $600 to do your level 2 at Studio 500, and then I think it's another 200 to 250 to write your exam. So like if you compare that to Marval or like private hairstyling colleges where the cost is like $15,000. So and you're out of work during that period while you're attending the school. This would be like the goal for all graduating OYAP students is that we want them, if they're interested in pursuing apprenticeship, the goal is for them to be working as a registered apprentice after they graduate and then continue. Like we want them, we obviously can't follow them, the whole length of their apprenticeship. We want them to get onto the pathway. And, in the accelerated program, we have job coaches that work sort of in the last like month of school and the first couple of weeks of the summer to facilitate the transition into regular apprenticeship. Yeah. Okay, Shannon. So where can we get this recording? That'll be on our website.
Yeah.
Under where will it be? Under resources, apprenticeship resources, or
Yeah, probably.
okay.
DVD.
Okay, so my son is an OYAP. He said after June he has to find an employer and get hired. Does OYAP end by that time?
So at the end of June, once students graduate, they're no longer OYAP students, and they have to provide their transcript to the ministry, and then they'll be converted to a regular apprentice. Okay, next question, Matt. My son is an accelerated OYAP for plumbing, and he has an RTA. Does his work hours on his timesheets automatically go to the ministry towards his apprenticeship, or does he have to submit them himself?
Okay, great question. If he has a registered training agreement, then the hours are being credited towards the completion of his apprenticeship already. There are, like, for everyone's knowledge, there is another way to do OYAP where you don't have a registered training agreement, and there is a method for those hours to be counted as well, and it's slightly more convoluted, but the way it works is we provide you with a certificate of completion at the end stating the number of hours that you did in OYAP and the dates that you did them in, and then that certificate has to be provided to the employer who registers you, and then that employer can then take that certificate and add the hours towards the completion of the apprenticeship. Okay, so does OYAP help students find an employer after co-op finishes in June?
If they're in the accelerated OYAP program, then yes, we do help them to find an employer if they aren't hired by their current co-op employer. Matt, are students covered by any kind of insurance, such as WSIB, during the apprenticeship?
Oh, I don't see that question. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So WSIB covers the students while they're working. And all students, regardless of whether they're paid or unpaid, are covered by WSIB. If the students are paid, the employer pays the WSIB. And if they're unpaid, then the Ministry of Education pays the WSIB. It should be noted that, while if the student's in the accelerated program, then they're insured. The training centers all have insurance. However, we recommend that you insure your students. You take out, it's a very inexpensive, I think it's insuremykids.com, where you pay, it's a couple of dollars a month, and it will cover your students to and from, traveling to and from the workplace, traveling to and from the training center, plus a variety of other different, possibilities that could occur that could sort of derail the experience. So yeah, we highly recommend Insure My Kids as a supplement to WSIB. Okay, Shannon, do you want to take this DocuSign question? I checked my email, my DocuSign.
Actually, I already replied to it privately.
Okay, here's a good one. Can you start with OYAP and proceed to college to switch direction at any point?
I don't see that one either. Can you say that one more time?
Okay, so can you start with OYAP and proceed to college to switch direction at any point?
Oh yeah, for sure. As long as you've taken the prerequisite classes in high school, like the college level classes that would be required. If you change your mind and you don't want to do an apprenticeship anymore, you can change anytime you want, and then go to college and do something totally different.
So yeah, it's like one thing that's important, I think, with that is that, OYAP and apprenticeship won't give you any credit towards the completion of college. But one of the, like, this is not the question that you asked, Leo, so I hope, but one question that we do get asked a lot about this is, my son or my daughter has completed OYAP. When should they go to college, or what do I have to do to apply to go to college? And the answer to that question is you don't have to apply to attend college, and we don't recommend switching to college unless like Leo's question, there is a change in direction happening. But the what we hope our students do when they leave OYAP is they start the apprenticeship process and then they continue the whole way through. That's what we're hoping for you, and and we're doing our best to sort of set that situation up. So, but those students who do complete accelerated OYAP or just a regular OYAP, the critical step for them is to maintain a registered training agreement. And there's detailed instructions about this coming to the students closer to graduation time about how to transition from OYAP apprentice to regular apprentice. And as long as they have their RTA, they will be invited to train for their level 2. So there's nothing they have to do. There's no OCAS or OUAC that they have to apply to. And we'll put all the apprentices will be given instructions about who they have. Everybody has a contact when they leave OYAP called the employment training consultant, and we'll provide your student with that person's contact information. And then that person can answer any questions that you may have about, when is training going to be, when will I get an invitation? But typically they can expect to wait about a year to a year and a half to get that invitation to do level 2. Okay. Shannon, here's one for you. My son has already started the Accelerated OYAP electrician program, but doesn't have a registered training agreement. Is there something OYAP is still working on?
Yes, we haven't finished them all yet. We're trying to gather up all the OYAP forms. We may not have an OYAP form for your son yet. We might have it, but maybe haven't had time to make the training agreement yet. There are still some outstanding, so they'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. There's a real push on right now to get them all done.
Okay, so
Matt, what happens if grade 12s fail a class and don't graduate? So thinking of a Studio 500 hair scenario.
Okay, great question. So this does happen for a couple of reasons. Sometimes the student gets accepted into the program and fails a semester 1 class, or for some reason doesn't pass the co-op part of the class, or if it's a dual, like there's lots of situations where this can happen. And obviously our intention is for you to start working immediately as an apprentice, but if you haven't graduated, that might be challenging. In the situation hairstyling, it's actually required to have an OSSD. However, hairstyling, the industry is sort of like the Wild West right now. Like there's no reason why you couldn't continue on as an apprentice hairstylist, having not graduated high school, provided you're working on it. So what I would recommend is you could probably do summer school and still work like evenings and weekends in a hair salon. You might do night school if you can get a good schedule that fits with your employment as a hairstylist. That's the approach. That's what I would recommend in that situation. There are situations where the student just has to come back for more than a couple of credits, and then in that case we recommend returning to school, get the OSSD, and then move on to the next step, even though it really is like the job coaches do an incredible job of really transitioning from high school to regular apprentice. It can be very challenging if the student doesn't get hired by their current co-op employer. What do they do? Well, the job coach solves that. And we have a really good network of employers that we work with. And some of them might be hiring lots of apprentices, where some of them might not be hiring any. So it's not necessarily a reflection of your student that they didn't get hired, but it is, I always like to say, it's a good chance to reflect on, what might you have done to create that situation if it wasn't presented to you. Okay, Shannon, can students ask their current co-op employer for a registered training agreement?
Well, if they're in OYAP, they can actually submit the OYAP form with section 1 and section 2 complete to us, and we will generate a registered training agreement. But it is a good idea to approach your employer about that and just say, like, I'd really love to become a registered apprentice. Will you sign it? They sometimes don't understand that doesn't mean that they have to hire you. Like, they are sometimes under the impression that by signing this document, they're agreeing to hire you. And you can say, like, that's not the case, but you'd love to be a registered apprentice so that your hours start accumulating.
Okay. When will the accelerated OYAP students know their college schedule? My son is plumbing at Humber.
You'll know as soon as we know. Right now, we don't have them yet.
I think the rumor is we're going to hear on Thursday night at 7 o'clock, apparently. So we have a meeting with, I think it's on Thursday. Yeah, Thursday night. So it's at that time that we'll know, and we'll be passing that information on to the students as soon as we know.
We may not find that out at that meeting, though, so let's not overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay.
Matt, does current co-op placement continue while a student is at Studio 500 from April to June? How do they find out the schedule?
Okay, so from when the training starts at Studio 500, the student should not be attending co-op. They should be attending Studio 500 only, because it really is a very immersive time. The only situation where there'd be an exception to that is that, and this does happen semi-regularly, especially in hairstyling, where the apprentice is paid to come during the weekends or the evenings. That would be the only situation. But if it's outside of co-op hours, they're not covered by the WSIB to do an unpaid co-op placement. So it's really clear. We're very clear on the fact that it needs to be paid in order for them to be doing it in off hours. Okay, Shannon, you said that you can enter OYAP until the age of 21, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Unless you haven't graduated from high school, then you can be over 21 and participate. Matt, my son is going to George Brown for 2 months after plumbing co-op. What is it for? Is he going to George Brown after June? What are the steps after June?
Okay, so your son is going to be going to do his level 1 at George Brown. And this, like, the plumbing apprenticeship looks precisely like this. There's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3, and then an exam. So during this time, he'll be completing his level 1 from April 24th or so to June, 17th, something like that. And then the goal is for him, after he finishes that, to return to his co-op employer for the last week of school, with the hope of transitioning that into a full-time job as a registered apprentice. That is the goal. So, I mean, that is ambitious, but that's the best place to look for co-op employment, or for employment after graduation, because that employer hopefully is impressed by the diligence, understanding, passion that the student is showing towards the trade. So it's very, very important that, you know, the student tries to impress the employer, because that is a really great place to look. So and then after June, basically the student will continue on this path. They'll be working for that employer or maybe a new employer for a period, at which point, you know, sometime in the, you know, 12 to 18 months after graduation, they will be invited to do their level 2. And this is the great thing about the way apprenticeship works, is that you'll be invited to do your level 2, and you'll get to choose whether you want to do whether you want to study at George Brown, or you want to switch to Humber College if that's more convenient for you, or if you'd rather go to Mohawk College because that's more convenient to you, or, you know, Durham College also has a TDA for plumbing. Whatever college that is apprenticeship training that is, you know, nearest to you or most convenient to you, you can just switch to them at any point. Okay. Shannon, it sounds like you will arrange an RTA for OYAP students. Did I understand that right?
If the student's in Accelerated OYAP, which your son is, then yes, we do arrange the RTA. If a student is not in Accelerated OYAP, but is in a regular OYAP, they can choose to register. Their co-op teacher just needs to submit the OYAP form to us, section 1 and section 2. Okay, can people without an OSSD who went on to complete a university degree participate in OYAP?
Well, that's a good question. So we have definitely seen this before, where especially foreign trained individuals without an OSSD come and do OYAP. That's totally possible. You will, so that what's challenging though is you have to enroll in a TDSB school, and part of the process of enrolling in a TDSB school is they're going to look at your qualifications and see, you know, how much education you've had, and if and what you'll need to complete an OSSD. So the only caveat to anyone can participate in OYAP, you know, if they don't have an OSSD, is that you also have to get registered into a TDSB school for cooperative education. Okay, so 100% of the time, OYAP happens inside co-op. So while, you know, OYAP OYAP has like certain boundaries and like rules governing it, you also have to abide by the registration requirements of the TDSB school that you're hoping to do your cooperative education course out of. And we, like, unfortunately, there is no hard and fast policy about that. So it's something that you should negotiate. You know, it's worth, like, if you're a newcomer, you can talk to the newcomers place, the newcomers welcoming center, or if you're not, you can talk to one of the 4 adult schools, Burnham Thorpe, SCAS, Yorkdale, or Calc, and speak with guidance about where you would sit if you were coming into the TDSB to get an OSSD. Okay, Shannon, after graduation and working towards level 2, then entering whatever college is wanted 12 to 18 months later, is the college paid for?
No, the college is not paid for at that point. Once you're no longer in OYAP, you actually have to pay for the 8 weeks yourself. But you've been working every 2 weeks along and you've been working along the way and getting paid every 2 weeks. So the $600 cost of that training shouldn't be too much of a burden.
Especially considering you'll collect unemployment or employment insurance while you're attending school. And also, if you're successful and you're in one of the Red Seal trades, then you'll get a grant upon the successful completion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Matt, what happens Oh, I lost it. What happens if an accelerated OYAP student does not get hired by his current co-op employer? Or students are not interested in the current co-op
Yeah.
employer?
So that happens quite regularly. And that I was speaking briefly about the job coaches. This was a pilot program that we started last year. We got funding from the School College Work Initiative to hire transition job coaches for the accelerated OYAP students. And to say it was successful would be a huge understatement. It bumped up our successful sort of flow through into paid apprenticeship upon graduation by almost 30%. So it was a hugely successful intervention where I think we saw the final number of accelerated students that successfully transitioned into paid employment was, in and around the 80 something percent range. So it's very high. So we do see a lot of this, and the job coaches facilitate the next step. Now I should say that like trades things, last year the sort of stars aligned for us. We don't make any promises about students continuing on. Like nothing's guaranteed in the world. So, but we do have a lot of resources that we put to the success of the students continuing on as a paid apprentice. Okay, Shannon, the RESP money can be used for these courses?
Yeah, definitely you can use RESP money for it. What you'll need is proof from the college that your student is enrolled in full-time studies. That's all they ask for, is like a letter in order to release those funds.
And while we're talking about RESPs, you can actually unlock your RESP if your student is in the Accelerated OYAP program. What if you are interested in that and you have an Accelerated OYAP student, then because apprenticeship is post-secondary education, what we'll need to get for you is a letter from the college or union training center that you can take to your RESP holder. And almost all of them, it's simple. There's a couple of banks that are harder to deal with when it comes to apprenticeship, but it does always happen. You just may have to fight harder. So we don't have any data on employment rate after co-op. The only hard data we have from last year's like job coach intervention was from the accelerated OYAP. So that's a very, very small subgroup of the TDSB's co-op. Like there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of co-op students in the TDSB, and accelerated OYAP, I think last year was 180 students. And Shannon, do you remember the number? It was like 82% or
yeah, it was really high. It was definitely up near that 75 to 80%.
And there was also that's not taking into account, there's definitely students who try this and then decide that they don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you sort of discount those numbers, then the rate of people who wanted it and got it was even higher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, Studio 500 will work to unlock the RESP because they're and the rationale is that there are costs to doing apprenticeship. And I would say, like the first cost that you're going to look at would be tools. Like if you're, this doesn't relate to necessarily hairstyling, but like a car in construction is probably the most important tool you're going to buy. And it's expensive, and you can use your RESP funds to purchase a car as an apprentice.
And the textbooks are also quite costly, and you'll have to buy textbooks as well.
So, depending on how many dependents you have in your RESP, talk to your financial advisor, but it's sometimes better to unlock it earlier than leaving it till later, because you never know what's going to happen in the future.
Wow, we made it through the questions. Oh, here we go. How long in an apprenticeship do you have to be in for Red Seal training? So can you talk about the Red Seal?
Okay, so essentially, like, what Red Seal means is you have the interprovincial designation, and like, to be more specific about that, it's like in the case of, say, hairstyling, you can see that there is a tiny little Canadian flag here. In this situation, all the provinces and territories agree that a level 1 hairstyling has to know X and a level 2 hairstyling person has to know Y. And they all agree. Okay. So what this means is that there's been like a partnership, but like the federal government has sort of, paid people essentially to align the training standards of all the provinces and territories. That's not to say that, like, for example, where's one that's not like a construction millwright. Okay, so this is something that's done in every province or territory, for sure. Is it a Red Seal trade? No. And what that means is that there's some disagreement in the provinces or territories about what a construction millwright should know at different times in their training and what the final outcome should be, and the knowledge of a construction millwright. So Red Seal trades, sometimes, like, they are 2 years. Like in the case of construction craft worker, it's a very short apprenticeship. So you can do it. There's 2 levels. It's about 2.5 years to complete. Whereas something like electrician, and so it's also important to note that the duration of the apprenticeship is different in the different sectors. And what I mean by that is that in the construction sector, it's measured by hours. So the numbers are escaping me right now, but I think like on the low end, it might be like 3,600 hours to do a construction craft worker apprenticeship, whereas in electrician, it's 7,200 hours. And then there is a 9,000 hour one. I can't remember which one it is now, but so there's a huge variety in construction in terms of the number of hours. In the other 3 sectors, it's actually competency based. So what that means is, instead of like just logging hours in the trade, you have to go through the book called the training standards, and have your employer or your sponsor sign off that you can do all of the different tasks required of an automotive service technician or a hairstylist or a general machinist. So and the big advantage, there's 2 main advantages of being in a Red Seal trade. The first one is that it's interprovincial, so you can go from province to province. You have an interprovincial designation, so you don't have to get recertified as a construction millwright if you move to British Columbia. The other big incentive is that there are, I think it's this way, the Red Seal incentivizes the completion of the in-school training and the completion of the exam. So in Red Seals, I was saying this before, but men would get 1,000, women would get 3,000 for the first 2 training levels. And then I think everyone gets 2,000 to do the final completion.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up being $4,000 in total Red Seal grant money to the men and 8,000 to the women. Okay, so here's a question for you, Shannon. Which ministry do we send the transcripts to?
So the transcripts go to the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development, but we'll send you the information of exactly who that should go to, because every student is assigned like a ministry contact there based on their employer's postal code.
Yeah. So if you send the transcript to the Ministry of Labor Training Skills Development, it will 100% not make it to the person that you need it to get to. So we give that information to the students when they graduate as part of their sort of exit package, so that they have the information that they need like around the time, and I'll order transcripts for all of the accelerated OYAP students so they can make that transition easier. Okay.
Matt, to clarify, an RTA is not a job, but a job gives you an RTA. Can you explain more about the RTA?
Okay. So an RTA is it's called a registered training agreement. And what it is it's an agreement between three parties: the apprentice, which is your student, the sponsor, which is the employer, and the Ministry of Labor Training and Skills Development. So this agreement, there's responsibilities for each party that signs the agreement and what they have to do, their responsibilities to complete the apprenticeship training. So the sponsor is agreeing to do this on the job training. This is a very significant, thing for employers to agree to, which is why, when Shannon's creating the RTAs, it's sometimes hard for the employers to get to sign them because, we're asking them to do something that's very significant here. And then there's obligations for the student that they're signing to agree to, and then obligations for the employer or for the government. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is that I'm going to go back to this slide here. Okay. So if we look at, say, this red square here, this is in electrician, construction, and maintenance. What this red square means that in this in this trade, we have, it's called a compulsory trade. So in this trade, all apprentices have to have registered training agreements. It's illegal for someone to work in this trade without a registered training agreement. Whereas if you look at something like general carpenter, anyone here could go to Kinko's and print up a business card saying you're a carpenter and start looking for work. You might not get a second job. You might get a first job. You likely won't get a second job if you don't have any skills or experience. But there's nothing preventing you from working in that field and saying you're a carpenter. So having an RTA, like you can, like, it's important to note, you can get a registered training agreement as a general carpenter, but it's not required for you to have a registered training agreement to be a general carpenter.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's getting into, a whole other thing. It's interesting because like the RTA actually does mean that you have a job in most cases, aside from OYAP, like really.
Oh yeah.
They're tied together.
Yeah. Shannon, what if students claim they don't learn much during co-op?
Well, they could talk to their employer and ask like if they could take on some more responsibility if their employer thought that they were ready for that. I think it's like just kind of a lot of it's a partnership, right? So the student has to show that they are really willing and want to learn more. They have to show that they want that. And then I think reach out to their employer and see if they get that. And if not, then maybe it's not a fit, and that might not be someone that they want to continue working with, and they want to look for somebody else.
Yeah. But there's like I would be curious to hear more about this. There's a couple of questions that I would ask. Like the first one would be, who is the employer? Because we would want to know that. And I would then ask a bunch of questions to the student. There are definitely situations where it's just not a fit, and the person, they're just not a good co-op supervisor, and they shouldn't be taking co-op students in the future, and we want to know that. There's also maybe situations where, you know, the employer's working, and they may not have time to like slow the pace down to explain every step in the process, for the student to really gain everything that they could out of it. And that's just simply because, you know, we're both like the employers are sort of bound to like make money. You know, if I'm like a single person, you know, and I have a truck and I'm an electrician, I still have to do the jobs. I've got 3 jobs to do today. I can't, you know, explain every detail that I'm doing. So there has to be a balance. Like it can't, you know, a co-op placement isn't like a live in-person lesson. And I don't think anyone explains that or expects that. But it should be an educational experience. But sometimes you learn things without really being able to articulate them. And it might be things like, you know, job readiness skills, like showing up on time. Like these are skills that you may not be able to articulate that you're learning them, but are probably the most important skills that we've seen employers want, in terms of hireability going forward.
Okay, well, I think everyone may have heard enough from us tonight. If you have any more questions, we'll stick around, but you're all free to leave at any point. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And I really appreciate the parents here trying to learn about this new pathway that their students are bravely in undertaking.
Thanks, everyone. And you can always reach out to us. Our contact information is on the website. Glad to hear your son's having an amazing experience. That's great. Farah, do you have a question? Got a bunch of accelerated students here.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we did. Okay, should we shut it down?
We might have parents using the Zoom accounts from their children, who know.
I'm gonna stop the recording.